Okay, Kathy, thank you so much for doing this. We don't know each other at all, and I am honored that you are willing to participate in this with me today. I found your book. You're an author and former FBI agent, and your book that you wrote is It's Not About the Gun. I have been interested in the FBI myself, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna read this book. And I read it and loved it. And I found you on Instagram and thought it was a long shot that you would respond, but here we are. So thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. I mean, and when people reach out to me on Instagram or on my website via my email, I answer every single email, every single Instagram, every single email, every single Facebook post. There's only been one email I have not responded to, and it was from a gentleman who was not being very nice.
Oh, well, good for you. Well, I was amazed that you responded, and I am so excited to talk to you. I just want to dissect your career basically and start from the beginning. And I know I encourage people to read your book so they can hear your whole story. And it's kind of funny because I do feel like I'm talking to someone I already know. But could you tell me about how you became interested? A little snippet of maybe your childhood and leading up to how you knew you wanted this to be a career in the FBI.
When I was a little girl, I had no idea the FBI even existed because I didn't really watch a lot of TV. There were six kids in my family, and my two older brothers, they're the ones who got to watch TV. And so, and I really wasn't that interested. I mean, I read a lot of books. I was always outside doing stuff outdoors. Um, so the FBI really didn't come on my radar for a lot of years. And really, the first thing I ever wanted to be was an archaeologist. So I was out digging in the fields for arrowheads and stuff like that. And then when I was in high school, I became interested in medicine. And from the time I was 15 until I was a senior in college, I basically worked in surgery and in ER and whatever hospital or medical capacity that I could, because I decided I was going to become a surgeon. And that was my goal. And that's pretty much what I studied in college. I was a pre-med major. And then I realized that if I were to go to medical school, my family really expected me to move back home. And I'm from a very, very small town in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And I have always known that I wanted to be adventurous. I would read books about other countries and other cultures and other languages. And I just craved going to those places. And I realized that if I went to medical school, that dream would be lost for me. So then I changed my major and started working on an MBA in international business. And then a family friend actually said to me, it's like, look, you want to travel, you want to do something different, you want to be adventurous, you want to do something other than what most women do, right? And I was like, yes. And he said, well, why don't you think about the FBI or the CIA or the State Department? They all work overseas and they all have, women in their ranks. And so I did. I started applying to all of them. And that's how I got into the FBI. It wasn't because I had a burning desire to be an FBI agent. It just sort of was by happenstance. And I believe that, the universe sort of gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want. And that's what I got. I got to have a fantastic career as an FBI special agent.
What's the process getting into the FBI?
Wow. For me, it's actually pretty short. It only took 9 months to get in from the time I applied to the time I got to go to the FBI Academy. A lot of people, it takes 2 to 3 years, depending on the hiring process. But at the time, the FBI was actually hiring women, and they were also hiring people with foreign language skills and people who had a medical background. So I like to say that I was the pre-Dana Scully FBI agent, Dana Scully being, the special agent from the X-Files. So anyway, that was my background, and that's really, I think, what got me into the main interview process and application process. So you have to fill out an application initially, and then once you pass that, which means you're an American citizen, you have a college degree, then you go on to a much longer application where basically you have to account for every single minute of your life from the day you were born. And then you have an interview, and then you have a physical fitness test, and then there's a background investigation where every person that you've known, it seems, around you your whole life gets interviewed about whether or not you're a good person, a decent person, an honest person, a reliable person. And then once you pass all of those tests, then you get to go to the FBI Academy, which is in Quantico, Virginia. It's actually in the Marine Corps base. And the training is 4 months long. And at the training academy, you have classroom work. You have classroom work in legal issues, how to write documents like that, if that you're going to use to testify in court, a whole host of things that you do in the classroom. And then there's physical fitness. You could be out running 10 miles one day, or you could be climbing over an obstacle course, learning defensive tactics, boxing, things like that. And then the other part of training is firearms training. And you're out on the range for a half a day at a time, shooting at targets and doing tactical shooting and exercises and things like that. So it's a pretty long process. So from the time I applied, it took me 9 months to get into the FBI Academy, and then another 4 months of training. And then I got sent to my first field office, which was in Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, okay. And so once you were sent to your field office, did you know what your assignment was going to be? Did you know what your job title was going to be?
Yes. So every agent that goes through the FBI Academy, or every agent that gets hired, your title is special agent. And so everybody is a special agent. And when I got to Alexandria, I was put on a government fraud squad. And at the time, there was this nationwide, major case, nationwide government fraud case that involved the Pentagon and a bunch of defense contractors and things like that. And it's white collar crime, basically, is what government fraud is. And it's, for me, I wasn't that interested in it. Now, I'm just going to be honest, government fraud and white collar crime is just not my thing. I joined the FBI because my easy class that I took in college when I was studying pre-med, my easy class that I took was Russian. And so when I got out of college, I could speak Russian pretty well. And I wanted to work counterintelligence, or I wanted to do something in the espionage and intelligence field. But the needs of the Bureau wouldn't let me do that at the time, because the need right at that point in the DC area was for government fraud. And so I had to end up working that for a few years. And I'm glad I did, because I really learned a lot. I learned a lot about the legal system, the justice system. I learned how to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And then I got to follow my dream of working in intelligence and espionage.
Oh, so this is interesting. You don't necessarily get a choice.
No.
Kind of, you're agreeing to go anywhere and do anything.
Yes.
And do you just submit that hopefully you can be a part of something that you want to be, or is that have to do with experience or anything like that? How do you get into something that you really want to focus on?
Well, when you're at the FBI Academy before you even graduate, you have no idea which field office they're going to send you to. That's just, again, it's the needs of the Bureau. So for instance, they'll give you a list, and I think now you have like a top 5 pick, or they'll at least send you back to a region if you choose a region. But when I went through, it wasn't like that. I mean, they kind of said, where would you like to go? And I said, I'll go anywhere west of the Mississippi. And they sent me to Alexandria, Virginia, which is about as far away from that as possible. But that's because they needed agents to work governmental fraud at the time. And no, I didn't have a choice as to what I was going to work. And what you have to do is, it's basically really based on seniority. You get some experience, maybe working 2, 3, or 4 years, and something that you don't necessarily want to work, but you learn a lot, and you learn to become part of a team, and you learn a lot about the legal system and things like that. So it's not something that goes to waste. You're going to use that no matter what you work in the FBI. But it takes a little while to work your way up to having a choice. And the way I did it was, um, the FBI was sending agents to the Defense Language Institute out in Monterey, California, to study foreign languages. And I already, had learned Spanish in high school and Russian in college, but you still have to take this made up test. It's called the D-Lab. It's actually a test devised by the US military. And it's fake language. And so they give you the rules at first, and then you write them down, and then you have to listen to all these sentences in this fake made up language, and then they ask you questions, and then that determines on how well you learn a language. So I scored really, really well on the language test, and the FBI said, you can go to the Defense Language Institute and study any language you want to study because you scored so high. What language would you like to study? And I said, which one is the hardest? And they said Chinese. And I said, I'll take that one. So I got sent to Monterey, California for 2.5 years, where I studied Mandarin Chinese.
Wow.
What generally happens after the FBI sends you to learn a foreign language, then you go and you work in counterintelligence for whatever country and that language that you've learned. So I ended up working Chinese counterintelligence in New York City after language school.
Let's go from there. Your assignments and where you moved and all the different responsibilities and jobs you had in the FBI.
Well, I spent 2.5 years in New York, and as much as I like New York, I had fallen in love with California when I was at language school. And so I opted to transfer back to San Francisco. And I went back to San Francisco and worked counterintelligence there. And I also ended up working international terrorism, which was a phenomenal area to work at the time. And then I just decided that I had always dreamed of working overseas with the FBI. And when I first got into the Bureau, there were I don't even think there were any women who were working overseas, maybe one or two, but there were very few FBI offices overseas at the time. And then by the time I got to San Francisco, Louis Freeh, who was the director, had really increased the number of FBI offices in American embassies around the world. And I thought, okay, it's going to be really tough for me to get one of those jobs, but I really want to do it. So I talked to my husband, Keith, and I said, in order for me to do this, I have to go back to Washington, D.C., to FBI headquarters, and I have to work there for a while and then work my way up into a position overseas as a legal attaché or an assistant legal attaché. So that's what I did. I went back to Washington to headquarters, started applying to jobs overseas, and ended up going to New Delhi, India as the legal attaché first. And then later I went to Beijing as the legal attaché in China.
Can you disclose and enlighten me about some of your responsibilities in that role?
As the legat?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, every day is different. I would go into the office and I would have all these grand plans. It's like, I'm going to get this done today and that done today. And then it all falls apart because as the legal attaché, you are the head of the FBI office in that country. And for instance, in New Delhi, India, I covered all of India, not just India, but Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. And if anything happened in those countries that involved an American, then I got involved. Or let's say, for instance, if there was a terrorist bombing or kidnapping or something in one of those countries, and their law enforcement wanted the assistance of the FBI, then I would get involved there too. Either I would help them out, or I would have to get a team of FBI agents to fly out and give them assistance. So every day I could be working on an international kidnapping. I could be working on a terrorism case. I could be working on a bombing. I could be this is such an unfortunate case that I had. I felt it made me so sad. a young woman had disappeared. She was Indian and she had moved to the United States and she had disappeared in the United States. And I had to call her parents in to take some DNA from them because a body had been found in the United States and they needed to identify as to whether or not it was her. Um, I mean, it was just, it was every day was something new, and it's long, long hours. But you get to work with some amazing people from not just the my foreign counterparts in India, law enforcement, or Nepal, but I got to work with my counterparts who were like the other countries' version of the FBI legal attaché, like from England and New Zealand and Australia and Canada. And I got to work with them and multiple ambassadors, multiple agencies within the US Embassy. There's just a whole host of things that happen when you work at a US Embassy that involve the United States. And inevitably, the FBI has to be consulted on, something down the line. So to to describe what one day was like as a legat would take pages and pages and pages, because every day was different. Every day was exciting. Every day was just so out of the norm that there were some days I would literally sit at my desk and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to do this job. It was great. It really was. There were some moments that weren't too great, but those happen along the way.